Welcome to Technical Leadership Talks, the podcast that brings you advice, insights, and knowledge from industry leaders and experts on how to navigate managing in a technical field. Technical Leadership Talks is brought to you by Texanum University's Master of Engineering Technical Management, an online graduate program that trains industry professionals for leadership positions. I'm Katie, METM's digital marketer and your host for this episode. In today's episode, we are featuring Branden Ramsey. Branden works at Axiom Space as the Senior Director of Digital Transformation. Today, we are discussing how to lead successful enterprise-wide technology rollouts. Can you share a bit about your current role and how it relates to leading digital transformations in companies?
Absolutely. So my title is Senior Director of Digital Transformation, which is basically a fancy way of saying I help companies stop using spreadsheets for everything. But in all seriousness, at Axiom Space, I lead the enterprise-wide initiatives that use software and technology to help improve how business operates. And that might mean automating onboarding or tracking inventory more effectively, surfacing key data for leaders, or rolling out major systems like an ERP or a PLM or an MES. And so my job is to connect the dots between the strategy, the systems, and the people so that technology is not just a shiny tool, but it's something that actually helps the business move faster, make better decisions, and scale better.
You've led these enterprise-wide technology rollouts across multiple industries. So what are some of the challenges that you consistently see?
Yeah, so I've led digital transformations across a wide range of industries, from retail, manufacturing, oil and gas, and aerospace. And while the tools and the terminologies might change, the core challenges are surprisingly consistent. One of the biggest is that everyone says they want change. People say, hey, well, I want the new software, or I want to replace this outdated legacy system. And they want automation, better data, all those fun things. But what they really want is for all of that to happen without them having to change the way they work, right?
Yeah.
And so inevitably, that resistance to change shows up at every level, even the senior leaders that might be asking for these changes, for better dashboards or real-time data. But when that means that changes how they work, or maybe they have to look at data in a different way to make these decisions, it gets uncomfortable for them as well. And so, and of course, the same goes to the day-to-day users. What used to take 2 clicks may now take 4 because it's supporting, a broader workflow somewhere else, or it's helping somewhere else in the organization that they maybe can't see. And so it feels like a step backwards at first. But the hard truth is that transformation means some areas may slow down a bit so that other parts of the business can move faster or smarter. And that's a tough sell unless people really understand that why behind it, right? And so ultimately, transformation isn't about just rolling out the new tools or the software. It's about changing those behaviors and perspectives and even culture. And that's where the real work lies.
Yeah. And so how do you approach those challenges? When people who are resistant to change, what do you do about that?
Well, so absolutely. So there you start with the basics. There's some best practices, if you will, right? You want to get early buy-in. You want to establish strong executive sponsorship. You want to have that steering committee that you run things through and get synced with. You've got your roadmaps and your milestones and feedback loops and all of those things that you would do that are just basically great project management, right? And they're important. They help you set up the foundation for success. But the thing is, and that's all fine on paper, in the reality, every transformation is different. The people are different, the culture is different, the tech stack is different, and the challenges that end up derailing you or knocking you off course are rarely the ones that you plan for. And so what I've learned is that beyond those best practices, which you've got to have, you have to lead with honesty and adaptability. You have to be willing to say to people, look, I don't have all the answers, but we're going to figure this out together, right? We're going to walk through this. And that's where that trust comes in. People don't need you to be perfect. They don't need you to know every answer about every piece of software or what if, right? They need to know that you care about their success, right? And that you're listening and that you're with it or in there with them, right? Change is uncomfortable. It threatens people's routines. In some cases, their identities might be locked up in a software that you're sunsetting, right? And if people believe that you have their best interests at heart, they're more willing to lean into the unknown and trust you. And it takes a lot of trust, and you can't fake that. You have to build that through consistency, empathy, and follow through. People can tell if you're trying to manipulate them into going somewhere, right?
Yeah, they for sure can.
Absolutely. So yes, we absolutely use frameworks. We use those tools, but what really gets it across that finish line is that human part, that being transparent, being steady when things get bumpy, right? Making people feel that they're not going through it alone. You're here to help them. You may not have all the answers, but we'll figure it out.
Whenever you're first going into a company or an industry, what are the key first steps that you should take, or anyone else who's doing something similar should take when preparing for a digital transformation initiative?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I like to tell our leaders, and they've got a big initiative. They got some reason they want to do it. They want to move away from a legacy system. They want to move to a new thing. Whatever that large digital change is, right? You've got to start by getting aligned on your why you're doing it, right? If there's no clear purpose, that effort's going to lose steam.
Yeah.
So next you take a look at, okay, are people ready for change? Are you doing a lot in the organization? Do we have time for this? This is going to be disruptive, right? Are you prepared for those disruptions? Those kind of things. Then you got to map out your goals. You got to create that roadmap. We kind of talked about those foundation best practices. But there also needs to be some governance to it. And so somebody needs to be keeping track of the whole thing, whether that's a project manager, and somebody's got to be that key decision maker. And a lot of times leaders want that to be them, but they're not available enough. And so you really need to appoint somebody that you can call them at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday and say, hey, we've got this big decision to make. What are we going to do? Otherwise, you're really slowing that down.
Right.
But with all that being said, the big thing is that why. You really, really, really have to understand that why, because every transformation hits a point where it gets really hard. You get resistance, you get pushback, it's expensive. People are starting to put pressure on, like, well, why are we spending money on this? We could be spending on other things. All of that's going to come at some point during every transformation. But it's that understanding that why that's really going to get you through that, right? And if your why is vague or surface level, you're going to lose momentum and you're not going to be able to push back on that, right? So you as the leader that is pushing this change or involved in this change have to be able to say, guys, this is why we're doing this. This is where we're going to be better after we get this. Because in the middle of it, it's going to be worse than what you were already before. You're disruptive, you're breaking things. And so that's really the key. You've got to understand that why.
Yeah. So my next question, you kind of already answered a little bit, but if you wanted to expand on it at all, how do you balance the technical side of this rollout with the human side? So we've talked about team buy-in, culture shifts, emotional responses to change. Anything else you want to expand on in talking about that?
Yeah, so it is a balance. There's absolutely a balance. The tech part is usually the easiest part, and the people side is the tough part, right? Yeah. But like I mentioned earlier, there are some good practices. There's workshops, there's lunch and learns, QA sessions, those types of things that really help kind of encourage that honest conversation, helps people feel heard, those types of things. But the goal is to make people feel that they're on this journey with you, right? And not just being dragged along for the ride, right? You create that environment where people are going to kind of feel that why that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, that's great. Is there a specific rollout you're especially proud of? And then what about it made it so successful?
So this is a great question. So I've had the chance to roll out some really cool stuff over the years. Some cool tech, big platforms, powerful analytics, all that really great stuff. But the one that actually comes to mind had nothing to do with the tech, as we were just previously talking. We were in the middle of a particular challenge in implementation. It was just stalling. We tried different approaches, best practices, all those fun things. We finally sat down with the groups and said, hey, what else can we do? What would it be different? Training, more hands-on? And one of the quieter folks in the room actually said, hey, would it be okay if I just talk to your implementation partners directly? Just the two of us sit down at a computer, remote, whatever it is, and just one by one walk through these things. And we were ecstatic. We were like, oh, absolutely, yes, we love this. And so, but once they had that personalized walkthrough, something just clicked for them. They understood the software more deeply, and they ended up becoming a champion for the whole project. And I mean, it totally shifted the whole dynamic of the thing. They were in meetings saying, no, this is great. It's going to be awesome when we get this done. And so that is one that I'm particularly proud of, which really had nothing to do with me. But you just really getting to see that shift, that behavioral shift, and that person that took ownership of the whole project.
What project management principles or tools have been the most effective when it comes to these transformations? Yeah,
so again, there's a good mix, but again, it's not the tools, but we used a mix of agile and traditional, depending on the project. So tools like Jira and Confluence, they really help kind of keep that cadence. And that's a really important part. You really have a defined cadence, whether that's weekly stand-ups or retrospectives or steering committees. People need to know that there's a consistent meeting cadence going on that they can depend on, plan around, and get updates.
Once again, this is one that you've talked about a bit, but if you want to expand on the role that communication plays throughout a digital rollout, and how do you ensure that the messaging stays consistent?
Communication is everything. And I always say, if you feel like you're over communicating, you're probably just getting started.
Okay.
So we do build a communication plan at the beginning. Hey, this is where our updates are going to go. If it's a Confluence page or emails or these meetings that I talked about, right? But you can't just broadcast it, right? We've got to make a space for feedback. So that's why we have these places like Lunch and Learns or something like that, where it's a two-way street.
In your experience, what are the biggest reasons that digital transformations fail, and how can leaders proactively avoid those pitfalls?
So I would say that the biggest one is actually a lack of commitment from leadership. If it's not at the top of that priority, it's not going to succeed, right? You're going to run into that pushback. You're going to run into, I'm spending dollars here. I could go back to the old way. It feels safer, all those things. Another big reason is trying to do too much too fast, boiling the ocean instead of focusing on kind of what really matters. But there's a balance there. If you move too slowly, it won't work either. Or if you don't make big moves when you need to make them, those can be bad too. And so you're constantly battling, am I moving too fast or am I moving too slow? But in the end, it's that lack of commitment. Are you going to push through when it gets comfortable, regardless?
How do you measure success during and after digital transformation, not just from a technical perspective, but also in terms of organizational impact?
Absolutely. So we do a mix of metrics, right? It is still digital transformation, so we care deeply about the technical piece.
Yes.
So on the technical side, you're looking at system uptime, adoption rates, support tickets. What does the usage look like? Is it growing month over month? Are people, having a lot of support tickets that they're sending in? Those types of things. But on the business side, it's process efficiency. One of the advantages to these things is it becomes very easy to measure your own improvement. You've rolled out a digital thing. You can see how long things are taking, time saved, cost reduction, those types of things. But then I pay close attention to how people are working. Are they collaborating more? Are they solving problems? And then the end goal is when the technology kind of disappears and people aren't talking about the tech anymore. It's just the way they work, right? They're no longer saying, this new system we rolled out, blah, blah, blah. They're just saying, I'm doing my day-to-day work. That tech kind of bleeds into the background and just becomes another tool as opposed to the thing that everyone was focused on as before.
Thank you for listening in to today's episode. Tech Leadership Talks is brought to you by Texas A&M University's Master of Engineering Technical Management. To learn more, visit metm.tamu.edu.